Hello, Future Tribe. Welcome to this episode of the podcast. We've got Dion Devow this week with us. How are you today, Dion?
Good, thanks, man. And you?
Good, thank you. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about what you do and the businesses that you're involved with.
I probably need to start way back when I was young. Had a long career in working in Indigenous health, education, and justice. I'm an Aboriginal and Torres Strait man, originally from Darwin. Came to Canberra in 1994 to go to university, and so I worked in the public service, helping Aboriginal people, like I said, in areas of health and education and justice, primarily as an Aboriginal health worker, and then went on to work coordinating and running the ACT Indigenous courts in Canberra, the ACT Magistrates Courts. And then I kind of went into the higher education sector, worked at Australian National University in the Devow Centre, helping and supporting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ANU students with their academic aspirations. And then about a decade ago, I kind of fell into a business. So I created an Indigenous clothing line because I saw a gap in the market. And going back 10 years ago, there's probably myself and possibly 3 other clothing labels, one that had been around already for maybe 20 years before that. And it's still going strong. And those other ones that I started with back then have now kind of dwindled away. But now the market's flooded with Indigenous clothing labels, and I think that's a good thing, because like I said, when I started, there's only a couple of us. And so I'm one of the longest Indigenous clothing labels, because it's been a decade now that have been around. It's called Darkies Designs, and I use the word deliberately to celebrate, my indigeneity and being proud of my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heritage and being black, and have used that as a vehicle to promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art through clothing and all sorts of different things, design, art and artists and culture and language. So it's been quite a powerful platform, and I've also been able to continue my work around community development through business. So I now run an Indigenous entrepreneur program. And I have a business kind of the Canberra Business Yarning Circle, which is a community consultation vehicle that I use to connect with Aboriginal entrepreneurs to see what we can do to help them with respect to their business journeys and aspirations through the program. And I was awarded ACT Australian of the Year back in 2018 because of the work that I've done through Darkies. And since establishing Darkies, I've established 4 other businesses. So I've got a cleaning company called Jingling. I've got 2 IT companies. One's called Yerra, and one's called Indigenation. That's all about change management and automation and AI. What else do I have? I've developed a business for my daughter called Tia and Bell. She was 11 at the time. She's 13 now. So that's another kind of Australian contemporary online shopping store that has kind of Australian products but with an Indigenous twist. So she's an upcoming, kidpreneur, as they call them these days. And I think that's about it. Yeah. But anyway.
Wow. There's so many that you sort of struggle to even remember them. How do you? I assume you're not sort of actively involved with every single one day in, day out. Is it
Yep.
more now a matter of sort of putting the right people in place and then managing it from a higher level?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I probably do bits and pieces on each of the businesses every day, some more than others. I'm heavily invested in, because Darkies is so well established, it kind of just runs itself. So I'm obviously still the face of it. I do all the invoicing. I'm the creative kind of force behind it. And people know me more, I think, because of Darkies. But like I said, that kind of just runs itself. That's what you want to do. You kind of want to create something, employ people to then come in and do it, and take a step back and then work on the business, not in the business. Not everybody wants to do that, but because I have so many different interests, that's what I've chosen to do. I think it's a good thing to do. Obviously, you have to build and develop your business to a point where you're able to do that. It's all about
Yeah, it's sort of
resources
like
and money.
raising up a person, or even raising up and
Yeah,
training a pet or something, where you just want to,
yeah,
you can get it to a stage where it can be self-sufficient. It knows where to find
mm,
food, and in the case of a child, more than just find food, but
yeah.
get into the world. But you can't just give birth to a teenager. You sort of have to take it through that
I
journey,
know.
and a business is the same thing. You can't just create a
Yeah,
business tomorrow and go, okay, I want to work on the business, not in the business. I'm going to remove myself from
yeah.
it and watch it take off. That's not just going to happen. How many people do you have sort
Mm.
of working for you and with you across the businesses, if you don't mind me asking?
I engage a lot of people. It depends on which one. So I engage a lot of people to do different things. I employ someone full time through Darkies, and have a few employees through the other different businesses, the cleaning business. Obviously, there's lots of employees because there's lots of cleaners, cleaning lots of different buildings, and working on lots of different projects. So it's a bit of mix and match. So can go from having one or two employees to having quite a few. So it depends on the industry and the demand and the resources and the capability of the business and the cash flow and all that sort of stuff as well. So so it
It
kind
sort
of
of
varies
varies a
from
little bit. Yeah, it
different.
sounds like it sounds like the businesses are fairly low, I guess, not very cash heavy. Not that there aren't a lot of sort of, do you guys have offices for every single business,
Yes,
things like
yeah, yeah.
that,
So I
or?
didn't, for a long time, I just worked from home,
Mm,
but it has its ups and downs, but I kind of was quite lonely, especially when I was first starting out, and because there was not a lot of Aboriginal people in business at the time. So I remember going back a decade ago, and it was before the development and implementation of the Indigenous procurement policy that the government brought in like 5 years ago. Since then, I think a lot more Aboriginal people are now participating in business and becoming business owners because there's more opportunity. Whereas when I was doing it, there was kind of not really many around. There were, but they're kind of doing things in their silos. And that was my idea around creating the yarning circle to bring Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people together to talk and support each other, and to discuss our kind of wins and losses and that sort of stuff, and creating a movement that was kind of supportive for people, and because it was quite lonely. So when I had enough money and resources, I got an office. So I've got an office that's based in Deakin, and also have spaces for young entrepreneurs that would like to come and hot desk, Aboriginal ones, and then people from the respective businesses work a couple of days. Some are part time. Do you know what I mean? As one of my business partners is coming back into the workforce after being home for a decade with her children. So it's a bit of a mixed match too with respect to the office, the Yerra offices, but that's what I wanted, something that was quite fluid, and there was a bit of diversity there. There's opportunity for entrepreneurs to come and work if they want to for free, a couple of days a week, and just a place that I can have, obviously work and have meetings and, so forth. So it's a beautiful space, and it's a nice area, and it's actually really good. And I know that, working at home has its advantages, but I think I quite like to have a bit of a mix. If I want to work from home, I will, but if I want to have, a really professional business meeting in a boardroom, then I have the opportunity to do that too. So, and I'm also helping other well, not necessarily young, just other Indigenous entrepreneurs have a
yeah,
space and a place
just
that they can work.
entrepreneurs in general. They don't have
Yeah,
to be young,
no,
because
exactly.
so especially nowadays, I think there's I mean, there was a time, I think, when there were people who were sort of career entrepreneurs, if you could call them that, but
Yeah,
nowadays there's no reason why you can't just leave what you were doing and start a
no.
business at 50, 60, 80 years
No,
old.
exactly. And I've seen people do
um
that. You know what I mean? And I've encouraged people to do that. There's a friend of mine, actually, when I was at university, he was one of the support workers in the Aboriginal Centre, and it was a similar role to the role that I did at ANU. And so I've known him for a long, long time. And he's a storyteller. So he goes and tells stories and talks about Aboriginal culture and stuff to kids, and he's really good at it. And I said, you should do that full time. And I really encouraged him. He's like, no, I couldn't do that full time. And but he ended up leaving, and I think he was 50, maybe 55 when he left, full time employment, and now he's kind of just booked out. Like he said, overseas travel. DFAT had booked him to do things overseas, for diplomats and so forth over there. And I just think that, if you give people an idea and encourage them, then, the sky's really the limit. And I think that sometimes we kind of don't really kind of believe in ourselves enough, or don't understand that there is opportunity there, to really thrive in the business kind of sector.
Yeah, because I think, and some of that happens through, your upbringing, through tradition.
Sorry, my son's got the TV on.
That's all good.
Can you turn that TV down, please? Sorry, Jerome.
That's all right. I was just saying, some of these things, some of these limits, I think people might place it on themselves, but there's also almost like upbringing and tradition and family that place limits. And those limits are not because they want to stifle you and stop you from growing, but it's because they feel like, within those parameters is safety, right? There's a reason why there's people who don't leave their country town, because that's safe. That's a known quantity. You go into the big bad city, there's advertising and drugs and all these bad things, and business to an extent can look like and seem like the same thing, because there's this promise of almost greatness, but at the same time, we all know people who've failed in business as well. So it's not like you just get into business and succeed. And all this is, I guess, to ask you about if you felt like there were any pressures sort of guiding you down the more traditional route, and how that came to be. And I guess I'm asking that also because I'm Sri Lankan, so my parents follow very sort of traditional direction. Getting into business wasn't really something. I mean, even the more less traditional parents, I think, wouldn't necessarily point their kid towards business. It's becoming more of a thing now, but there's definitely sort of these roadblocks almost. Did you get any of that? Did you feel any of that sort of going into a world where there aren't a lot of Indigenous people, and then two, I guess, looking into your background as well?
I definitely wasn't encouraged to become a business person. I had seen other people in my family and family members that were in business. My father was one of them. He had a cleaning business when I was growing up. But it wasn't something that was foreign to me, but education was more something. You have to go to university. You have to go to university. Like that was just, instilled in me from a young age, like just over and over and over and over again. So, and I saw my mother go from working as a cleaner as a career to studying part-time and obtaining a university degree, and then becoming a teacher, and then saw how that really changed our socioeconomic status kind of overnight. So I had a real kind of first-hand, experience around what education can do. So I kind of thought, I have to do that. And so I had, quite a good career, university graduate, and I kind of fell into business. So I didn't ever think that I would become a business person. So it's quite strange that I am. And even when I started Darkies, I thought it's just something that I'll do on the side, and I'd never ever give up the security of a full-time permanent position anywhere. But I did. So I think sometimes people fall into it, and for me it was kind of the realization that I could make good money still, and make even more money working for myself. And don't get me wrong, that didn't happen overnight. I've been in business for 10 years, and maybe 5 years ago it was really bad. I was kind of thinking, well, I gave this a crack. I might have to just go back and get a job. But then I won ICT Australian of the Year, so things got to change.
Well, and this is the thing though, I think I always ask myself this question, and it's something that comes up when you talk about a lot of sort of celebrities and famous figures. Someone always points to something and goes, "Well, you know, in your case, he won Australian of ACT Australian of the Year, and that's what." Sort of, you know, without that he wouldn't have been able to do all these things, almost like
Yeah.
that happened in a vacuum where you weren't
Yeah.
doing all
Right.
this other stuff, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like and it always sort of really confuses me when people bring up that argument of, you know, and the one that I hear a lot of is, you know, well, they were born into a family with a lot of money. If they weren't
Mm,
billionaires, well, you know, this person couldn't have started a business, for example.
mm,
Like, but at the same time, I know heaps of people who have won prizes, who have won awards, who come from money, who aren't actually able to do what, you know,
yeah.
what they would happily point at someone else and say, well, they were able to do it because of these reasons, rather
Yeah.
than pointing to they were able to do it because of all this hard work that they put in. In your
Yeah.
case, you know, like it would have been, I'm sure an award was never something that you were working towards, but it just
No.
happened as a result of all this other work that you put in.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
sounds like you sort of started off with the Darkies Design, by the way, like completely controversial name, I'm sure, when he came up with it.
Yeah. It still is sometimes, you know. Like, but
Yeah. I mean, when I heard it first, I was like, "Oh, is this, you know, is this guy serious?" Like, that's my first instinct was, I hope the guy who's behind this is dark, or you know, has
yeah.
or dark
Yeah.
is has something to do with, like, you
Yeah.
know, like emo goth or something. Because I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
otherwise, this is a statement. But going back, so
Yeah.
you started it as a side gig, side hustle, while you were sort of working a normal job.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did. So I kind of, and it was all kind of about, you know, empowering Aboriginal people. So there was a message behind it. You know, it is controversial. It was controversial. It still is. And I suppose it was really kind of just something because I'd already worked in, you know, community development and helping Aboriginal and Torres Strait people for 15 years by then. Do you know what I mean? So, and I kind of saw so much negativity and so much kind of distress and turmoil and you know, just, you know, working so intensely and closely with people on the ground, that I kind of just wanted to create something that made people feel good about themselves, even if it was just for, you know, a couple of hours. So and you know, most of you know, Aboriginal people are proud people, and I think that, you know, putting a symbol or some sort of language theme or Aboriginal art or something that really kind of promotes and celebrates and you know, it gives us the opportunity to do that as Aboriginal people, gives us, you know, a sense of empowerment and gives us some pride. And so that was really the idea behind the label, and that, you know, it's just really giving people the opportunity to, Aboriginal people and Torres Strait people, the opportunity to express how proud they are of our culture through, you know, clothing. So, and that's kind of grown and developed, and, you know, now I don't just do clothing, I do sporting apparel and corporate clothing, and which isn't Indigenous, and promotional materials and print products, and but that's just kind of a diversification of the and development of the business to have different lines of business. So, but you know, the centerpiece of it is around Aboriginal and Torres Strait culture and Aboriginal art and language, and it's something that sets me apart, I think, from other clothing labels, and I do my own things too, a little bit differently than the other Indigenous labels that have come about over the last, you know, 5 years. That's kept me going and kept me relevant and kept me, you know, viable as a business.
Yeah. Is there also an element here of sort of creating something that answers questions, or that
Yes.
serves a need that you felt like you had, you know, 5, 10, 15 years back, that and felt like there was, you know, opportunity, or you were looking for someone to serve this need that you had, but you couldn't find something. So is there a feeling of sort of creating that thing that you wish you
Yeah.
had as well?
Well, the other kind of element around the creation of the label was that, like I was saying, there was only a couple around, and I always really wanted to wear some cool Aboriginal kind of art on different sorts of apparel, and there was nothing really that I liked. Like, you know what I mean? I was supportive of it, but I thought I wouldn't wear that. Like, you know what I mean? So I kind of created my own. And so that's why I kind of engage with Aboriginal artists, and I use, in terms of design, I'll do that. Just put images up and say, well, what do you think about this? Do you know what I mean? And kind of get, it's just market research really, through social media. So I think it's important to do that. But I think, like being driven by what I think is cool, but also, what the public thinks and what they think might be cool and what they might want to wear, because it's smart in terms of, your business, being a business person, because it's all fine and good if I think something's cool, but if other people don't, then you're not going to buy it. So,
Then you don't have a business there, do you? You just have
yeah, exactly.
something that sort of pats yourself on the back, gives you what you want,
Well,
but doesn't really answer a question
yeah,
for the wider
exactly. And that's
public.
and that's what I say to a lot of people. It's like they think they have these fantastic ideas, but I say to them, well, that's great. It's great that you think that that's good, but who's going to buy it? So that's the question that you have to ask yourself, and you have to do some market research, and you can do that really easily through social media, and it takes one image for people to go, and I know that I'm not gonna.
It's so simple these days. I like do this thing that a few people have even in real life sort of mentioned it to me, that they love sort of seeing something like that pop up on my Instagram stories, where I just do simple things. Like at one point I was thinking about creating like a subscription tea service, right? So the whole point there was to try and source authentic tea from Sri Lanka, and then you can sort of subscribe, and then a certain portion of it would go towards some charity of some sort, and the goal there was say 50% of profits would go to a local charity, so you're helping someone in Australia, and then 50% would go to a Sri Lankan charity, so you're sort of getting both in one go. And all I started to do was put up Instagram stories with the poll feature to say, do you drink tea or do you drink coffee? What kind of tea do you drink? Black tea or green tea? And did that over like a week's time, and I got all this amazing feedback, and people thought it was just fun, and they were just keen to tell me, they were just keen to respond. Like I think people love to be like, oh, that person wants my feedback, I'm gonna sort of vote. It's like this thing that happens, and at the same time, I got 60 to 100 different responses about this product that I was thinking about making. Never happened, never did it, because I didn't have the time. But I guess it's all just say how easy it is nowadays to do this market research.
And you'll get supported or smashed very quickly.
Yeah.
In saying that, not everything works. I did these really cool yoga mats probably about 4 years ago, and no one was doing them. So I had some really cool Aboriginal art, and I put the images up, got some kind of samples made, and it just went off. Oh yeah, I'm gonna buy that. So I got all these yoga mats manufactured, and costed me a lot of money. And they just didn't sell. So they were actually sitting underneath my bed for 3.5 years. And then the pandemic hit, and no one could go to gym. So they sold it like that. I thought, okay, I might just see, how the yoga mats go now that people can't go to a gym, right? So they just went crazy. So sometimes things don't sell, straight away. And so, there's always risk, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say in a business. But I think, and you'll always kind of make mistakes, but you have to kind of really learn from those mistakes and try to, really be as cautious as you can when you're thinking about these risks, because, especially if you're an SME, one wrong decision could kind of break you, and the management of cash flow is really, obviously, really important in any business. So, so it is important to have an audience, and that's why it is good to have Insta and LinkedIn and Facebook and even TikTok these days, because that's what all our kids are all on at the moment. So to stay relevant, not that I've got a TikTok account, but
coming soon.
So anyway, I just think it's important to have an audience to engage with to keep you current and relevant.
Well, and also look at all these platforms as tools, not just. I think again, there's this response where you say, oh, I'm on Facebook, and the general response is stop procrastinating, stop wasting your time. But in reality, all these actually tools to look at where the market. You sell trendy products through Darkies Design. Like what sells is trend, not necessarily
Yeah.
utility value when it comes to fashion, because a
Mm.
t-shirt's a t-shirt, they're all
Yeah.
the same. So what you're selling is what looks nice or what people think is
Yes.
cool, and it's important that you keep your finger on the pulse. And one way of doing that is just
Yes.
monitoring social media. Use it as a tool, use it to your
Mm.
advantage, rather than
Yeah.
necessarily wasting time on it and spending a lot of time doing the wrong things on social media. There's a lot of
Yes.
opportunity there. um,
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you guys sell your product, through on like, is it through a website, or how do
Yeah.
you sort of get out there from in terms of Darkies Design?
Yeah. Well, it depends. It's things, items that you can buy straight from the website, like, for example, like Aboriginal designed masks. So they're just through the website. Some of the streetwear attire that I designed in honor of all of our veterans. And then there's other, just an inquiry kind of portal on the website, because a lot of the work that I do is for corporates and medical services and schools, so school uniforms. So then, that's more about kind of connecting email exchange, and then talking about design and whatever it is that they want specifically. So there's a bit of time to and forth, going back and forth and talking about that. So that can take some time, but there is a opportunity to buy straight from the website. It just depends on what
What
the
you're after
customer's
exactly.
wanting. Yeah,
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 yeah. And um we've talked about, I guess, a bunch of the really cool stuff you're doing. I'm sure there were things along the way that were just, you mentioned the yoga mats that were sounds like a bit of a mistake. So I think you just had to hang on to them until the timing was right. But if you
yeah,
were a small business and you spent all your money on that, that could have, like you mentioned, just wiped you out completely,
yeah.
because you would have not had money to invest into a essentially new
Yes.
SKU or new product. But any other things sort of come to mind where you sort of go, yeah, that was a misstep, I shouldn't have done that, or anything that nearly sort of broke you?
I think it's just that that particular, when you're talking about the clothing industry, carrying stock can kill you. Like, you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on clothing, and it just sits and doesn't move. So, for a small business like mine, and obviously I'm at a point now where I've done my other things with all my other businesses. They're kind of going on quite well. So I've gone back to Darkies, and I'm really trying to develop that. So I will probably have to carry stock into the future, because I'm developing the business, and I want it to be the biggest Indigenous clothing company in Australia. That's always been my goal, and I will do that. So I think you just have to manage that, and you have to be in a position where you, again, knowing what sells. If you don't have to carry stock, then don't. So it's a bit of a mix and match, but that's probably been the biggest thing in the past that could have possibly broken me. I remember one time having about $30,000 worth of stock that was just sitting in
Wow.
my spare room for a year. So I had to think about, well, what do I do with this stuff? How do I kind of, it was kind of just a write off a loss. So I had to kind of, I did a competition, I did different things where there were giveaways. And so it still kind of looked like, when you're in business, you kind of, a lot of it's about, aesthetics and the way you look and present, and you know what I mean? Like, uh, so I had to kind of make out like everything was good. So,
Yeah, sort of
people think,
almost
oh,
like that fake it till you make it sort
yeah,
of
yeah, that's exactly,
optics. You look like you're doing fine. In reality, you're like, how do I get
yeah.
rid of $30,000 worth of excess stock that isn't moving? Let's just give away, $1,000
Yeah,
worth
yeah,
of
yeah. It's
stock
just
a
like,
day for the whole month.
oh yeah, and I was crying every time I sent something out. But anyway, it's just what I had to do. Again, it's about that continuation, staying relevant and being connected. And I haven't done that a lot for a long time with Darkies. So I'm kind of engaging more with my audience. I'm changing the business up a bit. I'm trying to be more relevant to non-Indigenous Australia as well. Because I think, we're at a time now, we're at a point where non-Indigenous people are comfortable, or a lot more comfortable with wearing Aboriginal clothing and different types of apparel. When I started, especially with my name, Darkies, they're like, no way, I'm not wearing that. So I think, I feel like I've made a bit of a change in that whole kind of way of thinking. And it's still a bit of a struggle for people. They feel like, oh, they have to ask me, can I wear this, this Aboriginal designed shirt? And I said, well, of course you can. Like, I don't bring up Adidas and say, oh yeah, I'm black, can I wear your Adidas? Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like, to me,
exactly. I was just thinking about that. Like, it's an interesting point you make because we get involved, like working with clients. There are often clients who have either an Aboriginal or Indigenous sort of either getting funded through that and
yeah,
need to have design, or
yeah,
there's always sort of things coming up that I don't know where to look, who to turn to even ask, are we allowed to do this, are we allowed to do that. But then thinking back and look at even fashion, I am 100% certain there was a time, where hoodies were perceived as,
yeah,
had a
yeah,
certain image around them, right?
yes,
Even sort of the streetwear culture, where now it's
mm,
almost everyone wears that sort of
yeah,
clothing. There was a time where, you look like a thug if you just wore a hoodie,
yeah,
and um, and there were connotations around all this stuff. And
mm,
you make a very good point, like, because nowadays, like, you know I don't know if this is the right terminology, but the black culture sort of look
mm,
at African American culture,
yeah,
and how that's just become so mainstream. That hasn't
yes,
happened with what you're doing yet, or the sort of the
no,
Indigenous sort
not
of,
yet,
not yet, but there's this huge potential because you can draw on so
yes,
many, like, so much heritage and culture
yeah,
and imagery and design and stuff
yes,
that just looks
yeah,
really nice, but it just hasn't sort
yes.
of quite permeated yet.
No, the uptake hasn't been as quick, and people are a lot less, are a lot more hesitant to, to do what they've done with African American streetwear and culture and so forth. There's more of a, I think, perception around a cooler element when we're talking about Black Americans as opposed to Black Australians, and that's really interesting to me because I also have African American heritage. My grandfather was over here in the Second World War, and he was from Louisiana. So I kind of love that look and love. I mean, I even look like more, probably people say I look more African American than I do Aboriginal, which is probably true, but
Yeah.
we all look different. But I've got both. So I have kind of in my mind, and there's a lot of Aboriginal people that have the same heritage as me in Australia because of the Second World War. So there's a lot of us with Aboriginal blood and African American blood, which is really really interesting. And I've always kind of thought that my clothing does have, and the style of it does have a kind of little bit of that element. Especially the street wear line. So it's a kind of a combination of that. But I really would like more Australians, non-Indigenous Australia, to really kind of celebrate more and
Sort of embrace that a little bit more.
yeah, embrace Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture more as part of being Australian. So that's really my message, and that's what I say to everyone. It's like you don't have to be black to wear an Aboriginal flag or an Aboriginal design. Or you don't have to ask for permission to do that. Like I think it's very respectful, and I think it's respectful that they've asked. So they're obviously thinking about that because they don't want to offend. But so I think we just need to keep continuing to have these conversations and say to people, well, yes, it is okay to wear an Aboriginal flag on a shirt. If you're not Aboriginal, I wear an Australian flag. You know what I mean? It's
Exactly,
like,
exactly. Or people wear,
because,
the
yeah, yeah,
Union
so,
Jack or the American
yeah, yeah,
flag, and
yeah.
you never ask, you never think that,
No,
uh,
yeah.
just do it.
So, I mean, it is nice in a way, but also it kind of, in terms of a business perspective, it inhibits, my ability to make more money because there's these obstacles that people have around. Well, can I actually wear that? Should I purchase that? You know what I mean? So it can make it harder when you're in business. And if I had, sometimes I thought in hindsight, oh, maybe I shouldn't have called it Darkies, but I was trying to prove a point, and I've made that point. But I've still been, really, actually really successful in that business. And like I said, it's been going for 10 years, and I've established four other businesses in the meantime. So it was a good kind of training ground. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I mean, fashion's it's a commodity, right? So, just trying to stand out because people appreciate good design, but there's only so much they'll pay for, a nice
Oh,
t-shirt. They're not just going to
yeah.
spend infinite amounts of money on it, and it just makes it as a business case quite difficult because you're competing with everyone, like anyone
Yes.
and everyone from Kmart to Louis Vuitton is a
Yeah.
competitor, even though you can sort of
Yes.
segment the market, because it's sort
Yes.
of commodity items. Before we move on from the whole, I guess, looking at how we can or how it can become more mainstream, for the lack of a better
Yeah.
word,
Yes.
do you think part of it, I mean, look at Black American culture. I feel like part
Mm.
of what's made it so pervasive is that um it's just so they have these ambassadors almost, right? Like I can't think of a single sport where there aren't African Americans who are at the top, whether or people who
Yes.
look like African Americans,
Yeah.
um so I feel like that's sort of helped, and there's hip hop and
Definitely.
music that, again, like
Mm.
the most Aussie person would headbang to like Kanye West, and
Yeah.
there's a certain level of coolness to it.
Yes.
Have you thought about sort of I guess tapping Indigenous sort of celebrities, for the lack of a better word, on the shoulder and sort of group teaming up with them to try and um push that sort of similar um
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
thing
Definitely.
forward?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have. Going back to, I'm giving secrets away now, but when I was sending a lot of, I've always kind of given stuff out to promote the label. So I always did use and always have used, Aboriginal people with high profiles. So whether they're politicians or sporting people or, actors or, have you heard of Black Comedy? The show Black Comedy on the ABC?
No, right.
It's an Aboriginal comedy show.
Hmm.
Actually, really quite successful now. But a couple of years ago, one of the actors in there wore a few of my designs like 3 or 4 weeks in a row. So, like I've kind of done it. I've been quite strategic about that, and that was kind of when I only had Darkies, and I really was trying to always, think of ways to get it out there. I don't kind of really feel like I have to do that anymore, even though there's lots of other Indigenous clothing labels out there that have surpassed anything that I've ever done, and are a lot more popular. But I kind of feel like, well, I've established myself as a business person. Darkies has been around for a decade. I've got some runs on the board, and I don't really feel the need to have to do that. But in saying that, I probably will start, reaching out to a few high profile people to take some pics and get it out there, and non-Indigenous Australians too, because that's what I would really like to see, more people that aren't necessarily just Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people wearing my designs. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, no, I mean, when you're looking to relaunch and sort of tapping into that sort of makes sense. Um, Looking at like the fact that you've got a number of businesses, um,
Mm.
before we wrap up, I'd be interested to hear about how you think of business as a whole. In that, like, I look at business as, again, like a tool, as a vehicle, whether it's to
Mm.
make to create change,
Yeah.
to normalize things, to make a message heard. It sounds to me like you sort of look at business in a similar vein, and you just have
Mm.
different businesses that sort of cater to different things. But
Yes.
is that sort of how you look at business, as just this one big thing that you can create and shut down and open and ramp up
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah.
as you please? Is that sort of how you look at it?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel like because I'm quite a lateral thinker and quite creative. So when I see an opportunity and a gap in the market, then I think there may be an opportunity to create something or to develop something, then I do. Uh, I think for a while there was a bit crazy because I was, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do this and I'll do that. So I wouldn't advise people to do that, because then you spread yourself too thin. I'm at a point now where I've kind of brought people on board so that I can rely and trust them enough to do what they need to do with respect to all of the businesses, and I do my part, and that's why they're still developing, and none of my businesses have failed. Um, but yeah, I kind of feel like I like the fact that I can help people through that, through my businesses, and create opportunities for employment for people that I like. For other Aboriginal people, I have the opportunity to sponsor, sporting clubs and things like that. And I like the way that, in business, color's not such, a big thing, because when you're a business person, you want to help people, and, there's a community there. There's a sense of community that you don't really find, say, for example, working as a public servant. It's exciting, it's challenging, it's bloody hard, but it's rewarding too. And there's a real sense of respect around. And I think I'm doing it too, also to change the perceptions that, non-Indigenous people in the wider community have had about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the past. Because I am successful and I am creating, businesses and opportunities for people. And I'm still helping people in all of my businesses. There is a component there where I'm giving back to the Aboriginal community and bringing Black and white people together to work on projects and to do things together. And I think that that's a big part of what I like about business as well, is that, we all have to work together. We should work together. We don't always do that, but I think business creates opportunities for very different people from very different backgrounds and cultures to come together.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something, we sort of want to celebrate, is like at Future Theory and through the podcast and through what we're trying to do, is celebrating the fact that like you said, it's this common thread that can tie anyone and everyone together. Like just the other day, I saw that Stripe, which is a payment processor, I don't know if you've heard of them, they're a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yes.
They've purchased a Nigerian startup for, I think it was the biggest acquisition by Stripe to date, a couple $100 million, right? And I think it was something like that. And what impressed me there was that this huge multinational payment processor has gone to Africa and purchased a company based out of Nigeria. Now, I can't think of any other instance apart from sport where that can happen, where this giant will go in and pick up this other thing. So business has just this way of what we would say is like equalizing, right? Of sort of making an even playing field for everyone involved.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely, there is that element to business, and that's, I think, another thing that I like about it. Yeah.
And another thing I picked up on was it sounds like you do feel, and I get this, I have this feeling as well of like you almost represent a whole society, like a whole community, a whole sort of kind of a whole people, where like when I talk to people, I'm like, dude, you're representing Sri Lankans, like you're a Sri Lankan Australian, but like people are gonna blame Sri Lanka if you mess up, if you if you don't deliver on time, they're gonna be like, oh man, Sri Lankans, like don't work with them. Do you get a bit of that feeling just being a minority in these when you go into the business world?
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially when I was starting out, because I had kind of never really had, besides my father, who would already sold his business many years before, I didn't kind of really have much context or frame of reference or, anybody to talk to about it. And there was a sense of this, oh, okay, well, and people would say, oh, what's he doing, doing this label, what's Dion doing? And, and especially when I ended up having multiple businesses that say, what's he doing now? But yeah, there is kind of a sense of, I think, having to represent and to succeed. And sometimes that's can be hard, and can make it harder, and it can make the journey sometimes a bit more lonely. And the more success you get, the more hits you get too. Like I've learned to become, I used to be I am still sensitive in nature, but these days, it takes something pretty bad for it to really affect me. You know what I mean? So you can become a lot more resilient, and you need to have that when you're in business, and even when you're not that successful. You know what I mean? Like, you have to just keep going if you want to succeed. But when that success comes, it's kind of like, tall poppy syndrome as well. And but yeah, but I do feel like I'm representing, and I do feel like it's given me the opportunity to go back to my roots as well and learn more about my Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, especially when I'm talking about Darkies, because it's so centered around my culture, and also thinking about in the future, some sort of collaboration with an African American label too, to kind of bring that element in. And that's again, always trying to be a little bit different, have a bit of an edge over other other businesses. And when I'm talking about my label, that's something that I think I wouldn't mind doing. And also kind of an Islander influence, because I have Islander heritage as well. So Torres Strait Islander heritage, but also South Sea Islander heritage, because my father's a descendant of the slaves that were brought over from the blackbirding days, which Australia doesn't really know much about. There's a part about history that people, white settlers would go and travel the seas, and take people from their islands, from the Solomon Islands, from Vanuatu, from New Hebrides, you know what I mean? And so a lot of Aboriginal people have that heritage as well. But I'd like to tap into that. My particular island is in Tanna, which is in part of Vanuatu, which the French colonised, and that's why my name's Devow. It's not spelt right, but it's French, derived. It's French derivation. So I wouldn't mind kind of implementing that kind of some Islander feel to some of the elements of design when I'm talking about my label as well. But yeah, so there's lots of people that I feel like I represent. So
no, definitely. Yeah, and it can feel like a bit of a weight sometimes, but at the same time, it's also not the worst thing to have a bit of pressure to sort of push you forward. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to touch on that sort of thing that you mentioned about, you're still a sensitive person, but you can take a few more hits. And I think for anyone listening, I think what I've learned is that it's important to work on yourself and sort of your mindset and how you look at things and how you handle things. To the best way I can explain it is to maintain as stable a baseline emotion as possible, so that, whether you succeed or you fail, that baseline doesn't sort of, because the last thing you want is this baseline that's just bumping between, good and bad, right? Because in a day in business, you can go through literally everything, let alone a year in business or 10 years in business. So it's just maintaining that stable, especially when you've got people working for you, they shouldn't get, you shouldn't get angry at them because of something that happened to you in the morning that they had nothing to do with, or so you need to sort of just work on, I guess, that emotional side and really look into yourself and your mental sort of mindset as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like you do, it is, because it's so busy when you're making and generating your own money. There's no time for nonsense. There's no time to fart ass around, and dwelling on things that you just need to deal with things really swiftly, practically, and really sensibly. And sometimes that's hard, because there is pressure. You have to pay people. You have to do this. You've got bills. You've got places to be and events to be at, and talks to give or whatever. And so I feel like sometimes if you allow that to kind of get to you, then it can really affect your mental health and your physical health. So I think you need a good balance in life. You need to be able to take time out, and when you go into business, do that sensibly. So I would never say to anybody, quit your job and go and work. You know what I mean? Like, work and then see how your business goes. It's like, don't give up your day job. Just do it as a hobby possibly at first, and then it's different if you've got investors or if you come from money. That's different, because at the end of the day, like, it's all about how you can manage and how you can build and develop your label or your business, whatever that might be, without and still being able to pay the bills. So I think you just have to have a lot of common sense as well around. And when you're your business, you are the business. When you have a business, like for me, a lot of my business, I'm the center of that. I'm the face of it. On the, what I mean? Like, people, when they see the business, they know it's me. And so, so you have to look after yourself. And sometimes that's hard. I'm getting old now. I'm nearly 50, and I'm fat. Probably drinking wine at night. Losing my looks now, not my hair, but yeah. Like, I think it's important to to look good, to present well, to look after yourself, look after your family. You know, I mean, that's really important. That's why I'm down the coast at the moment. Still working, but like, I think, mix it up a bit and make sure you're able to remember what are you working for, the things in your life that are important, which is your health, which are your loved ones, your children, your wife, or your husband, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, just have a bit of a kind of, like you're saying, a baseline, a really kind of sensible, balanced outlook on life, but actually practice that as well. Because when sometimes I've seen people in business and they work themselves to death. For what?
Yeah. Forgetting to spend time with the family. Yeah. What's it all for?
Bit of a balance, it's good to be rich, but no good being rich if you're dead.
Exactly. Or rich if you're estranged from your family because, they don't know who you are.
Well, you got no family.
Yeah.
So that's really important. That's really important too. There's so many different factors that you have to think about when you're in business, and you have to be smart. And good business people are smart.
Yeah.
Because you don't survive otherwise. You have to be smart. You have to think smart. You have to be strategic. Otherwise, it's just it doesn't work.
Well, ultimately, I think it all comes down to execution. That's how I look at it. It's not so much anything else, but how you decide to do what you do and how you decide to say no to certain things. It's about, and that's why you've got to be smart, because it's all in what you do with what you're given. Just quickly going back to you getting to ACT Australian of the Year, it was all like, again, there are heaps of people who win awards who aren't able to, or who don't do the right things with it, or don't do things with it that get them anywhere. Like, I know heaps of people who've won awards and X, Y, and Z, and that was it. Like, it was received, it was done deal. So it's all execution at the end of the day. Before we roll into the top 12, where can people find out more about yourself and your businesses and connect with you?
So I've got like I said, 5 different businesses, and just Google Darkies or Google Yerra, or just go to any of the websites, or when you like anybody, when you're trying to have a bit of a squiz at someone, you just Google them these days. Everyone just does that, don't they? So, and then everything comes up. So you know what I mean? So before it was like, I'll go to www. Well, you just, now people just stalk each other on social media. And
yeah, just search up a name and exactly.
Yeah, search a name, and everyone's kind of life is out there. You can't get away from it. So that's the kind of the easiest way to. But Darkies is probably the one that you'll find me.
Yeah,
and you'll find me that I do, and that's. I mean, I don't even know, how did you find me?
Hayden found you. So you'll have to ask Hayden.
Yeah, it's funny, but these types of yarns, these types of things that I do, it's weird that people track you down, and they might not even be, and it's not even sometimes that people know me. It's just like they've typed in Indigenous entrepreneur, and then I come up. You know what I mean? So it's kind of by chance a lot of the time, but I think the more things you do. Even like this, if you could, I'll be online or something, we're doing this interview somewhere, or so it's kind of very easy for people to find people these days.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Just Google Dion, you'll find out all about his businesses and what he's doing. Are you ready for the top 12?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's roll into it. So, top 3 books or podcasts that you recommend?
The Bible. I actually don't read many. I don't read a lot, to tell you the truth, and I don't listen to too many podcasts, so I can't really give you that many answers. But number 1, 2, and 3, read the Bible. You'll get somewhere in life if you start reading that.
Yeah, have you read the Bible yourself, or do you read the Bible?
Yeah, every day. Yeah, every day. First thing I do when I get up.
Wow, I don't know why I'm surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, but I can tell you this much: no one else has given that answer before. So, um,
Well, that's the first thing. That's what I attribute all of my success to. Yeah.
yeah, wow, love it.
Mm,
That's like a whole other podcast episode that I'd love to have a conversation with you about sometime. Um,
sure.
top three software or tools that you can't live without.
Ah, I can't live without. Are you talking software or hardware?
Either.
My phone, my laptop, my phone, my laptop.
What apps do you sort of rely on? What do you use for emails? What do you use for?
Just like it's not a good thing, but because I've got so much going on, I have to, my phone. I'm constantly on my phone, which isn't, like I said, it's not good. Sometimes the kids are saying, "Get out the phone, Dad." But we have so much access to technology, and I'm always just scrolling through and checking my emails, and I have my laptop everywhere. But I mean, that's a part of my life and part of my business, and that's what allows me to have the flexibility to work from wherever and still make money. And be a successful business person. I need to be able to do that. So, but I do need to switch off, and you know,
Yeah, it's a
especially
fine balance at the end of the day. But when you've
yeah,
got a
that's
number
exactly
of
right.
businesses, like they also require your attention. That's how you got to look at
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yes.
Um, top three mantras you try to live by. Anything you sort of tell yourself?
Yeah. I just thought, well, going back to my faith, I have a couple of verses. My favorite verses from the Bible, Psalm 37:4. It's delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of thine heart. So that's something that I meditate on quite a lot. I've got lots of scriptures that I meditate on, and that's, like I said, is what really helps me to get through. They say, when you're reading the Bible, you don't actually read the Bible, the Bible reads you. So there's something, or a passage or a scripture or an example or something, a strategy for everything in life in the Bible. So that's what I use to get me through. Yeah.
Love it,
Yeah.
love it. Top three people you follow or study and why?
Um, top three people. That's a hard one. Um, ah, there's not really anybody in particular. I kind of like to watch different politicians. I like to watch um, different different business people. I like to watch different sports people, and I like to watch just people in general. Like people, say for example, that I have seen kind of grow as business people through the entrepreneur program that I run, because I think that people have been in my business for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like I've worked really closely, intensely with people, and that's kind of carried over into business. And I kind of am quite interested in people in general, because I kind of want to help where I can. But I think it's just nice to see people, because you can learn from all sorts of different people, and they don't have to be, billionaires or amazing successful people. They can just be everyday people. And I find I do some mentoring with young Aboriginal public servants, and I learn a lot from them. I do lots of talks at schools and our youths. I learn a lot from them because they kind of are so open, a lot of them anyway. And I think just in terms of, again, staying relevant and knowing what's happening to people in different lives and different kind of sectors of the community, our youth is something that we don't really kind of look at enough. And I think we need to do more because they're our future, I think we need to encourage them, but also we need to be able to learn from them. And like I said, I learned so much from, and I love spending time with younger people. Yeah. And I mean, like, even, like I said, I'm nearly 50, so I'm getting old, but young for me is someone that's 30, you know what I mean? Someone that's 20 or
Yeah,
someone that's,
yeah. Well, I
like
mean,
a teenager.
I do
Yeah.
a similar thing where I follow sort of younger people closer to me in age still, but in their 20s,
Yeah.
who, like, for me, it's not, again, they're not millionaires, they don't even have like a crazy following or anything like that, but it's just looking at how they do what they do to,
Yeah.
some of them have like a group of um, 200 people that they can always talk to on social media, that
Yes.
respond to them, that engage with them. And to me, that's a very powerful thing. Like, obviously this young person has worked out what it is that their followers and their friends and people they want to communicate with are looking for, and are giving them that thing.
Yes.
So I think this is a good reminder that you don't need to follow people who are successful and
No.
multimillionaires or billionaires, because, like, again, I learn from my staff as much as they learn from me.
Yeah.
I learn from every client,
Mm.
as much as we help them and they learn from us. So I think this
Yeah.
has been an awesome reminder that
Yeah.
um, there's there's learnable, teachable moments. There's things happening all around you that you can learn from
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you surround yourself with people that, I like to surround myself with people that, and that's another thing, an element of business that I like, because especially when created a business, I've not really known a lot about that industry. So you end up being and engaging people that do, and so you learn from them and you learn more about the business. And yeah, that's kind of a big part of what I do on a daily basis. So learn from, because I'm not a big reader, see. So I'd rather see things and learn things in a practical way. I think it's quite cultural too, because we never had like a written
Yeah,
kind of language or anything like that.
texts to read
We
from and
taught
things
or
like that.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yes, yeah.
You were
I do.
shown, and then you learned
Yes, yeah,
from the actions of doing and
yes,
learning,
yeah,
that
yeah, and
way. Yeah.
stories, yeah,
That are passed on.
storytelling,
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
mm,
Well, this has been an awesome conversation with you, Dion. Thank you for your time.
yeah. Thank you for your time. Nice to meet you and stay in touch.
Likewise. Thanks.